I want to start about talking, like you were just telling me just before this session, that there is a copy of Queeristan in every room in this hotel. So how did that make you feel? Like, how did that happen, firstly, and like, how does that make you feel?
So it feels really good. First of all, thank you for doing this, and thank you for being such an incredible audience. My request to all of you on the sides is come sit in the middle. We're going to have a fun session. If you're not staying in this session, then please go now because you're making too much noise. So either come here and have fun with us or go away, okay? Love you. Buy the book. Um, and for all of those who are behind, come in front because for Insta, we'll just show this bit and we'll say, pack session. Come, darlings, come in front. Huh. Okay, so I feel incredible because a lot of what the premise of Queeristan that we can co-create a queer inclusive India in which all of us can flourish. When we have instances of large hotel chains like this, understanding that premise and kind of doing what I call jugaad resistance and cultural acupuncture in the book, which is using their position to bring about change and doing it through the cultural lens a simple act of placing a book in every room can open people's minds and change their lives and encourage them to become more and more inclusive as well. So I feel really, really good. I think it's been an incredible past couple of years. There's huge challenges that we have as a queer community or as the multiple queer communities that make up who we are. But still, whether in terms of the law, there have been magnificent legal victories. And hopefully the legal victories will keep on coming because there's a bunch of cases that will soon come up. In families, in public media, in workplaces as well, I've seen a lot of progress. Progress that I, as a young, awkward, gay boy growing up, would never have imagined in my lifetime. For example, just before coming here last week, I was speaking, I spoke at 2 schools in Bombay. I spoke at Cathedral and Jamnabai at events that were initiated by the students, the Parent-Teacher Association, trustees, and principals. Now, this was just in the span of 1 week, right? And this is after doing Nagpur Lit Fest and all of that as well. Even 4 or 5 years ago, we were not having these conversations on a regular basis in schools, in colleges, families, and so on. So to answer your question, how do I feel? I feel I'm a glasses half full kind of person. So I feel incredibly charged that we have a moment at this time when we can collectively kind of change not just the narrative around LGBTQ rights, but also change the lives materially of so many queer people across this country, which are not being fulfilled wholly because of the diminished existences that we are forced to live in, right? So this is that moment that if we all collaborate, we can really co-create an incredibly new, inclusive India, which I'm affectionately calling Queeristan.
Right. But at the same time, like, I just met somebody, like a very loved cousin, actually, like a few weeks ago. And firstly, he said, I met a gay. And and then he so proceeded to tell us how this was at a wedding. And there were like 2 very camp gay men. And like after a point, everybody was initially very nice. But then some uncle got up and said, like, nikalo inko. And he got irritated or something. So like, how are these... So when we talk about diversity and inclusion in the workplace, do you sometimes feel that you're talking to people who are, you're preaching to the choir? Are these changes actually getting down to, the ordinary people of India?
Yes and no. And the answer to everything is yes and no. Because life is full of, my daily life is like hope and despair and like, abject sadness and then fabulousness all together. So sometimes I don't feel I'm preaching to the choir, but each time when you hear of things like this, you just realize how much more work there needs to be done to educate, to dispel, to kind of, bring people, to call people into a conversation about inclusivity and so on. Having said, again, correlations like I know many straight men who are camp. So being camp does not mean that you're gay. I know many gay people who are like completely butch and who would not be here because I think Poland is playing someone right now at the World Cup or whatever. Um, so
I know.
again, but
It's
we
a
have to
whole.
educate society that, certain mannerisms do not make you queer, certain hobbies. For example, my friends cannot believe that I like Metallica. I even went to the, any Metallica lovers. I mean, you don't have to be straight to like
You're
Metallica.
only supposed to like Broadway musicals, right? Like show tunes.
Or like, I don't know, like, Madonna from my generation or Lady Gaga or like whoever. Who's the next Lady Gaga now?
Taylor's.
Taylor Swift was last season, no? Dua Lipa, no? Yeah, but like, you can do both also, no? I mean, I like Dua Lipa also. But like, I like Badshah also. I know a little problematic, but what to do? The music is damn good, yeah. But so what do I feel? I feel like there's so much work to be done. Fundamentally, I feel that we in India are not homophobic. I feel we are ignorant. We are queer ignorant. And so I feel more optimistic that ignorance can be dispelled with either facts or stories, humor, lived experiences, seeing lived experiences, popular culture, more and more people sharing their multiple authentic selves with other people so that people realize that queer people are also, I mean, there's not one type of queer person. We're as much of a spectrum as everyone else. And I'm seeing that happen. So am I seeing a lot of performativity in workplaces? Yes. Do I see organizations which only in June change their Instagram filter and call people like us, and for the remaining 11 months, they think that queerness doesn't exist? Yes. But am I also seeing organizations which are doing the work, which are training the senior leaders, which are creating pathway programs for, say, trans employees? Lalit, we are at the Lalit, for example. Lalit has a transgender baking scholarship. So if you happen to be trans and you want to bake, there are baking scholarships for you that then you can then, be funneled into the F&B system over here.
Lalit has always been like hugely
And there are so many others as well. So am I seeing that structural change? Yes. Am I seeing consultants calling out to me for board level diversity? Yes. Am I seeing people willing to invest in infrastructure, like all gender washrooms, and think of it as an investment in the future and not as a cost kick? Oh God, this is expensive. I'm seeing the positivity as well, which is why my glass is half full, because I'm seeing the excitement as well.
Right. So I guess my question is that, when we see how much of that has an effect on the overall culture? Like when you make a policy that a board member should be from the community and all of that. I mean, how much of that has an impact on the shop floor, so to speak, right? Like how much of it kind of permeates down to the actual culture of the shop floor where two people are working next to each other?
I think everything changes culture. I think it's policies, certainly, but it's also how you role model, how you exemplify the stories you tell. I mean, within the corporate world, for example, if you create ongoing conversations in which, queerness is normalized as part of so many other conversations, if it, for example, doesn't only come up during Pride Month, but if as part of workplace balance conversations, one person happens to be queer, and this goes for any other aspect of, say, marginalization. If, women don't only come on stage in March, but if women are part of conversations all around the year, or if on the International Day of Disabilities, you don't bring out that one person you have in a wheelchair on that day, but maybe you think that people who, who live with disabilities are part of a fabric all around, year round, so who are present all the time. I think in these spaces, when it's normalized, that's how the culture changes. So there's multiple things. Of course, policies in organizations, the law in countries act as impetus. But how do you operationalize that? And you operationalize that through normalizing it through conversations, through culture, through storytelling, through role modeling, by starting things, for example, that other people follow. For example, now Bombay, I don't know how it is in Bangalore schools, but Bombay schools are full of FOMO. So one school says, if one parent-teacher association mother says, my school kids are doing an LGBTQ association, the next school mothers will say, and our kids are not, that means we also
Yeah,
need to have one, And before you know it, the schools which don't have LGBT conversation, they are the uncool ones. They're like, what? You don't have this? You're not queer friendly? You. So, but that's culture. How we create that momentum is up to us. You can't depend on only the queer people to create this momentum.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need allies as well, no? Because queer people, we are about 6 to 10% of any population, which is good. Should we do a show of hands? Should we see if 6 to 10% of people here are queer? How many people are queer? Oh my God, by this sample size, I think we're about 40% of the population. So everyone who's read Queeristan, my numbers are clearly wrong. We've got to change these numbers next time.
Okay.
So if you're, like, I love doing this. If you're writing about this in Mint, and I do hope you do, hashtag subtle plug. Can you just say that 40% of people are queer?
Yes, absolutely. Making a note right now. Yeah. And this is being recorded as well. So, like, we have it for posterity.
Because, it'll come in 2-3 articles that she writes, and then that'll be the new figure
that will
everyone
be the
will
new
use.
figure. Yeah, because if when somebody Googles.
So thank
it's
you,
like,
Bangalore. You have changed the statistics for our country.
Woo! Yeah. So,
So can I just finish it? So it's not just 6 to 10% of people are queer, right? We are also, and this is true, the queer economy in India is about $200 billion. The queer economy globally is about $5 trillion, right? So there's enough, I'm saying there needs to be enough of an understanding that when
as an economic force, right?
we are an economic force. All the data says that when you bring diverse talent into your group, your productivity goes up by 8 times, 8x return, right? So all the data says that, being inclusive is really good for you. It's good for society. It's good for business. It's good for innovation. And we need more and more allies to understand that. So when you are being inclusive, say as an ally, the few of you who didn't raise your hands, it's fine. We love straight people also. But for those of you, so I'm assuming you're allies, being LGBTQ inclusive is also good for y'all as allies. It'll make your life better as well. And that's, as more and more people are realizing that, I think more and more people this momentum is building. And culture changes that way.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you a little bit about your experience as a gay man, pre-Article 377, in very traditional sort of corporate setups. Like, how did people react to you? What was your, did you have difficulty sort of settling in or blending in, or, did you feel like uncomfortable? Were there any occasions when, and how has that changed?
So I've been very privileged because of my education, because of my because of the way I communicate, because of the fact that, I've been bullied since I was a child. So over the years, I've got a very strong defense mechanism. So by the time I reached the workplace, people couldn't bully me majorly, but there are often, but even for someone as privileged as me, having gone to the educational places I've gone to and having that a confidence because of that and everything else, there have still been a range of microaggressions, right? It's very different for other people who don't have these advantages as well. All the data says, for example, there's a Mingles survey of a couple of years ago, which looked at attitudes towards, it looked at LGBTQ people's experience in the workplace. And about 70%, oh, that's a song going. I was like, is it a protest?
Yeah, so exciting.
Because again, 70% of people in that survey had been bullied or heard homophobic comments by their peers or by their bosses and so on and so on. And hence, it's no wonder that most people choose not to come out, either in colleges, education institutions, or in the workplace as well, because that is also very, very prevalent. In my case, I didn't face it directly, but there's infinite kind of microaggressions, including even silly ones that you don't. For example, I pushed myself on the stage at one work-life balance conversation with 4 straight people, and they all spent 55 minutes talking about their respective husbands and wives and this. I spoke for 5 minutes about my partner, and the feedback I got after that was, it's nice, but why you have to make everything about being gay? And I was like, but they spent 55 minutes talking about being straight all the time. And maybe you didn't see it because, they're saying my husband, my wife. The moment I say partner, whatever, suddenly I'm making it about being gay. Now, how to...
Yeah, how do you
But I was like, it is my life. I'm talking about my work-life balance, and I happen to be gay. So, I mean, these microaggressions come up all the time. But the result is that it's very hard for queer people to succeed and to thrive, right? So mental health challenges are very, very high. A lot of queer people feel undue pressure to perform more than others, just to kind of prove that they are there because of this concept that, people who are in majorities mostly have called merit. Merit tends to look and sound like people who are already in power. And so queer people, because straight people are mostly in power, queer people think that they have to look and act like straight people to succeed in particular
Yeah,
ways and
yeah.
whatever. So the challenges are immense. To answer your question, what's amazing is that so many progressive workplaces are having these conversations, are creating systems and structures to kind of unpack some of these challenges and really create opportunities for all their employees, including, I would say, their straight employees to flourish, and like literally like, bring themselves to work so that everyone can do well, be happy, make tons of money, make the company profits, and like, it's capitalism, baby. So it's win, win, win.
Yeah, I mean, and that comes across so strongly in your book, like through all the stories of people that you talk. I mean, people you've interviewed, whose sort of, experiences that you kind of hold up, and along with your own. And the book is written in this very beautifully conversational manner, where Parmesh sort of, weaves in his own experiences, his story, his friends' stories, stories from like back 10 years ago, and then suddenly there's a story about like yesterday. So, it's all very, it is exactly like what he described it. It's a memoir meets a manifesto. And so, Parmesh, I mean, what are some of the things that, say, heterosexual people today take for granted in India that are still sort of not available to the queer community?
Oh, everything, so many things. I mean, the laws, for example. I know, I mean, it's an issue which is going to come up, but I pay the same amount of income tax as my straight friends. Actually, I pay more. I think I make more money than them.
Okay.
But they
Yes,
are,
Queen.
no, but they get the right to like, I mean, when they can marry the partner of their choice and like have their partner's name very easily on their assets, and they don't have to think of anything else. And when they go to hospital, suddenly like their partner will be in charge of them, and I have to live my life as a second-class citizen. Why? I mean, you know, so there's on every level, right? Right from the law to how, to how we are treated in families, for example, to schools and colleges, to jobs,
Adoption.
all the way up to representation. For example, I mean, there's very few queer people at high levels of, power anywhere. And so there is a systemic, and, if you parse that even further, it will be even, the numbers are even more abject for trans people within, because queerness is a huge umbrella, right? So on a daily basis, it's extremely, extremely challenging in society. Simple things, for example, even well-meaning efforts, right? So Kochi Metro, for example, will say, let's hire trans people, which is a great effort. And this is also iterative, so everyone learns along the way. They find trans people who are willing to work for them. But unfortunately, because of the way the city is, the employees are unable to find homes near their workplaces. And so that housing becomes a challenge. So in the next iteration, Kochi Metro then says, okay, this is a particular set
Provide
of
housing for
circumstances, we
them,
have to
yeah.
like work on houses and so on, right? So I think so it's very, very challenging. What excites me, and which is why this book is, despite all these challenges, how many of us are thriving, how many of us are creating, whether workplace families, whether home families, whether imaginations of how happiness looks like. I mean, how much of that is happening despite all these challenges? And that turns me on, which means that if the laws become in our favor, if society changes even little bit, I mean, it's going to be rainbow revolution and explosion, because we are here despite it all. With it all, imagine how exciting it's going to be.
Yes, Queen. I want to talk a little bit about, whenever, so like even your book, the subtitle, sort of the this thing of your book. So in the book, you kind of refer to this a lot, and this is sort of this term that we've come to use a lot, like LGBTQIA++. We all know what it stands for, and because we've made the trouble of going and finding out, right? But I hear from a lot of people, these are not my views, but there's a lot of complaining I hear about, oh, it's like every year you add another letter to it. How much are we supposed to remember? Like, oh my God, can't we just shorten this already and all of that, right? Uh, but of course, there is a point to it, right? What is the point to it? Can you explain?
I have many things to say in this. First of all, more is more. I'm a maximalist, so why would you want less when you can have more? You should see my house. More is more. And look at our tables. There's one talcum powder, there's one perfume, there's one photo, then you add one more thing, then you go somewhere, you add one more thing. It all fits. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
very fine. First, more is more. I think minimalism is like
Very overrated.
last season.
Very
It's
overrated.
not, last season trying to be cool or whatever. First, more is more. Remember that. Number two, I think it's incredible when you find a word that matches how you feel. That feeling
Yeah.
is incredible, right? So you might not know what pansexual is, but you might be feeling this, and you might say, is there anyone else out there who feels like this? And then you find a word that describes exactly how you feel. It's like the sakoon you get, like you've come home. Like, why would you want to take that away from people? So that's number two, right?
Yeah, that's
So
such a great-
number three, all these people who complain about there being too many terms, you can remember Game of Thrones characters, no? Who did what to who. You can remember, like, this Indian cricket team, who's in the T20 team, who's in the one-day team, who's the test team. Every day they keep on changing, but people remember. No, Rahul is not in that team. No, Virat is in that team. No. You can remember all these things on a daily basis. You can remember the share price of Infosys, what it was 3 years ago because you're investing. You can remember all kinds of things, right? You can't remember a few words. Come on. Who are these people who are asking you
So,
these things?
I will send them to you the next time.
If they're in college, don't fail them. If they're
Okay.
in the workplace, don't give
Yeah.
them their bonus.
Yeah.
They
No
can't
more
remember
promotions.
yeah. Come on.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the basic intelligence to obviously be at a workplace, so like, this
So
is
learn a few things. It's good. Knowledge is good. Okay, let's try. Okay, what is L? Everyone, what does L stand for? Very good. If this was in Bombay, I'd be throwing out chocolates, but like,
chocolates. You didn't
It's-
get chocolate.
well, next year, if y'all will have me back. Okay, G. G, though there's too much of in general. Very good. B. You're sure? Okay. T. Transgender. It's a big umbrella, right? Includes a whole bunch of identities. There's a whole chapter in Queeristan. You can buy the book and read it. It's a lovely chapter, yeah? Q. Or questioning. Very good. I. Does anyone know what intersex is? Would anyone like to put their hand up and explain?
Take a shot, somebody. I mean,
All those who said intersex, you just know, you don't know what it means.
Someone who is born with both male and female reproductive organs, or might have the secondary sexual characteristics, or they identify as that. So because
Or indeterminate.
or
yeah.
indetermination, because biological sexes also comes on a spectrum. It's not just XX and XY like we are taught normally.
Yeah, very good.
well done.
And often here, doctors just assign a sex to that child often. And so by the time that person grows up, and has dysphoria, it's very, very hard, right? There are states in India which have banned. Tamil Nadu has banned surgery on intersex children. We hope that many other states
That
follow
becomes the norm, yeah.
as well.
A.
A.
Yes.
Or who's an ally? We all are. Because we all have to be allies to each other. I'm also an ally to straight people. We all are allies. Because only when we are allies will we understand. No. Only because I'm an ally to straight people, I will invest, I will learn about them, I will say, oh, you fight with your husband the same way? Oh, the solidarity, right? Allyship is like in saying that I will never know what it's like to be in your shoes, but I can understand because I'm going through something like in whatever, right? So allyship is like that common ground, yeah? Plus,
All about
plus.
empathy. Yeah, plus.
Yeah. Plus, all the identities, so many other identities. Actually, in India, we have Aravani, we have Hijra, we have Koti, we have Shiva Shakti, we have Jogappa. I mean, we had Manjama today, who was amazing. It's all these multitudes of identities that we have in our rich and like fabulous queer culture in this subcontinent as well. Now, why would anyone want to reduce this to less simply because they don't understand? Instead of celebrating the diversity in all its joy and glory, I don't understand. So if you find these people, send them to me.
Yeah. You know, in some ways, this book also acts as a sort of narrative of, you know, the fight for queer rights that has happened in India, especially, right? And you start with one of those stories. You know, do you want to talk a little bit about that, like how it felt to have like the Nas judgment overturned, and then, you know, like, and then a few years down the line, the Supreme Court, you know, read down Article 377, and how important do you think it is for us to know this historical narrative behind the rights that we've got?
No, it felt terrible. I think there are many people here who were around in 2013. I mean, it felt like someone's punched you literally, physically. Not just hearing about it, but reading these words, minuscule minority. I've just told you that we are 6 to 10% of the public. But even if we were not, even if we were just 1%, even if we were one person, our constitution gives all of us equal rights, right? So to read stuff like minuscule minority, so it felt terrible. It felt, you know, it was a violation. But more fundamentally and practically, since I'm in the corporate world, between 2009 and 2013, many companies had said, chalo, 377 is gone, let's become inclusive. So they started policies, they started associations, they started hiring. It's like everyone's come out and they've started dancing and saying, inclusion, inclusion. And then suddenly this judgment comes and so it's like the DJ has put the music off. Now what? What was really amazing is that all of us continued dancing. We said the music will come on again, and it came in some years, right? That's what was amazing. We kept it up. We said no. At some point or the other, laws will change, but we've got to do our work. So it was a lot of anger and a lot of pain. But there was a resolution by the lawyers, by the corporate activists, by the health activists, by the incredible media which supported us through the years. And I want to thank you. I think the media is so maligned these days, but you know, your profession, which has chronicled us, which has advocated for us, and which has played as much a part, I would say, in where we are today as the courts or whatever has done an incredible job in telling our stories over the years. And everything came together, right? Our filmmakers, the kind of stories that were being told then. So people, you know, by the time 2018 came, I think we had made that push in society. These judges don't sit in
they are not in a vacuum, right?
They don't sit in a vacuum. They are seeing movies like Badhai Do and Ek Ladki Ko Dekha and Chandigarh Kare Aashiqui and Muthan and Dear Dad and all of this. They're reading books. Hopefully they read Queeristan. They're reading so many others, right? They're putting the TV on. They're seeing Duty Chand as a out and proud queer champion. They're seeing all of this, right? And they're seeing Manjama receive an award with such joy from the president of our country. So these minds change, right? So between that despair of 2013 and 2018, that hope. But I also don't think I think 2018 was just the start. Because it's okay, now we are no longer criminals, but what? Right?
So what next? I think marriage, right? I mean, that
Everything.
is the biggest.
Everything.
Okay.
Not linear, not priorities. Why straight people prioritize kya ki we'll only get this and we'll only get this. Straight people to have all the rights and all the laws together, no? Why should there be like a list of one priority only?
No, only in terms of like the legislative sort of part.
No, everything.
Of it. Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. Unless, of course, since I'm a capitalist, you say between now and then, we can pay less tax.
Yeah.
Because I'm fulfilling, we're all, the 6 to 10% of our queer Indians, we are fulfilling all our obligations as citizens of this incredible nation. Why then do we not have all the rights? Answer me. And why should we wait in a staggered manner? I want it all, and I would have liked it yesterday.
Now. Yeah.
Yeah. But theek hai, I'll wait for it. I want it, chalo, today or tomorrow.
बस इतना सा ख्वाब है. So,
ख्वाब ही नहीं, हक hai.
Of course. So in the book, you write, there was this very interesting passage where you write about being at this event with Sonam Kapoor and many other, like, Sonam is an ally, of course, and
That other life of mine when I'm not at LitFest.
yeah, like very glam and everything, yeah. Have you seen these photos in the bow tie? I'm so disappointed you didn't wear that bow tie. I mean,
Darling, I wore this bespoke couture.
no, this is
I've
of
learned if you
course
say
also.
bespoke and couture and some hashtag words, na, the value just goes up. You know? It's like, yeah.
Also sustainable.
It's very sustainable,
Very sustainable,
darling. Yeah.
absolutely.
Ah.
Yeah. Handcrafted.
Fully.
Fully, exactly. So, so in that session, and there were like many icons there were 2 or 3 other icons of the gay community and the queer community. And I mean, and you write that when they first invited you, you said you didn't want to be part of that event if the other 4 speakers were all going to be gay men. And I mean, somewhere I think, that comes across that, somehow gay men have become like the voice of the community. You don't hear the other voices that much. Why did that happen? And like, should that be changed?
No, I think certainly it should be changed, which is why I think with anything I'm invited to, first I say, can you call someone else? And that someone else should be very, very different. I think it is absolutely vital and fundamental that those of us who have any kind of power, any kind of position, use that power as a holding space to widen the net of inclusion for others. So I think, with that particular thing that you were talking about, that particular session,
Yeah.
because Elle and Twitter made the effort, and we helped them to make the effort, they were able to find a trans man, a trans woman, a lesbian. They were able to find that representation in the Twitter Blue Room, which ultimately made the Twitter Blue Room a more enriching experience for all of us, including Sonam, including Twitter, including Elle. So I think it's very, very vital. Straight people have the same problem with manels.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a bunch of men. Often these manels come up at women's conferences, which to me is like hilarious. But I think it's very vital for the gay men who are around and who, for over the past few years, have occupied positions of power, for us to understand that sharing the mic, ceding that space to others within the LGBT community is only going to enhance our movement and make it rich. And right now, our community is underrepresented on so many dimensions within the community, whether it's Dalit queers, whether it's Muslim queers, whether it's trans men, trans women. There are a lot more trans women out in public and in the public sphere, but trans men are often invisibilized and so on. Queer people from rural India, and there's actually incredible stuff happening. I urge everyone, it's an audience of book lovers. Maya Sharma has a new book out right now called Footprints of a Queer History, which is incredible, which is about her memoir about activism in Gujarat, working with rural Gujarati lesbian women, and so on. So I think it's vital that we understand that it's only when we widen our net within our community and ensure that our community reflects the rich nature, that the community that is seen looks like the real community that it is. Otherwise, it's going to be very similar. How are we creating
We'll have gay
alternative and better
manners,
models?
basically.
We're emulating, straight models of, straight men mansplaining and things like that. And we don't want that.
I want to ask the audience if there are any questions.
So I just want to say that as an out man, I recently founded a queer collective at my organization, at the place where I work. It was really an uphill battle and all kinds of microaggression. Are there even enough people? You're such a small community. Does it matter? Do you have to be public? And I can go on. And I think the way I kept myself going was that I wasn't doing it for myself. I was doing it for the queer babies who are going to benefit from it, because I did not have this when I was starting out maybe 7, 8, 10 years ago. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on how do you deal with the exhaustion. It's insanely exhausting to keep going, and I know it's not our job to do all the work, and we need more people, but at the end of the day, it still ends up being us, and it's incredibly exhausting sometimes. And how do you cope with this? So what are your thoughts on that?
So thank you first for sharing. It's very exhausting, which is why Queeristan is a call for allyship to straight people also. Because it is exhausting for us queer people to perform, to justify our existence, to prove to others, to convince others. Then they say, you are queer, you only do it. They don't pay extra for it, but you have to do it. They often don't give budgets for it, so you have to call your friends who will do it for, it's a nightmare. How do I deal with it? I'm I'm a hustler. I love to hustle. I don't leave the table without a deal. If someone says we can do something but not this, I'll put my toe in and I'll say, let's do something. Because once I have my toe in, the door is not closed. Then I put my elbow in. Then I say, can you give some money for this? Kya? Then some money comes in. We say, can we hire some people? Kya? Then it's elbowed in or whatever, right? So step one, but even before that, I don't imagine that we're living in an equal world. I imagine and I know that we're living in a world in which the odds are stacked against us. So that is the reality. I hope that for the queer babies, the next generation, that is not the case, but for us, that is it. So hence, if we're not living in an ideal world, we have to hustle to kind of be heard, widen the net, and so on and so. That's number, right? In hustling, I never leave the table without a deal. That's number two. Number three, in this process, which is tiring and taxing or whatever, I try my best to work with community-based organizations as well and because NGOs, community-based organizations deal with this all the time. So strategies, skills, etc. is very good to learn from your friends in the NGO spaces. Also, since you're in the corporate space, it's great to bring in our community people into these spaces as well because then there's a monetary benefit. You can hire our community-based organization for things or whatever, but also it's great fun because then you have your community-based organization which is in the space with you. There is that solidarity. Number four, I seek active allyship from my straight colleagues or whatever. I tell everyone, what is active allyship? Stand up for our rights, show up for our events and so on, which means pride is not just for queer people, it's for straight people as well or whatever. Speak up, which means that if you see someone being bullied, if you see injustice, speak up, because often the queer person may not have the confidence or may be marginalized in a way or may not be able to speak up. And the last which said, shut up, which is then when it's not your place, let the queer person talk, cede space, and so on, right? So 4 S's that I try to work with active allies: stand up, show up, and shut up. So that's what I do with allies. And point number 5, I think, at the end of this, is when I go home, I realize that this is a marathon and not a sprint. So to survive, we need to do self-care. For me, self-care is a few pieces of dark chocolate every night and Netflix, and then maybe some chips and chakli or whatever. It may not be food for you, it may be something else. It may be a book, it may be something else. But take out some time every day for that me time and say, the whole burden of the world is not on my head. I'm struggling, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make a better world. But this is my me time where I'm going to do whatever I take to be. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to tell you, like, I'm so sorry that, I mean, you don't have to fight all the time. You shouldn't have to, it shouldn't have to be like that. And it's really, I mean, you should be as flawed and as, like, as much of a bitch whenever you want. Like, you shouldn't have to stand for somebody. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, I mean, it's really
But
sad.
when we have more and more allies, which is why that's the thing, right? When we have more and more allies that realizing that LGBTQ rights are also straight people rights, I mean, that's when we all have to see that we are at this point, there's multiple struggles in the world, and we all seem to think that living in our silos seems to be ideal, right? There are young people all over the world and older people fighting for a better environment. In this country, I mean, there's a long historical struggle for caste, right?
Yeah.
In other parts of the world, and here
About
as well,
race,
it's
yeah.
about race, it's about so many other dimensions as well. It's about ability, and so on, right? So I think allyship, as we were saying earlier, is when we all realize that we all have to support each other in imagining and co-creating this better world. And when we do, it will benefit all of us. So when we understand that, then we call people into our struggle. And that's what I've tried to do as well, saying it's not my thing alone. It's your struggle as well, because ultimately the world we're going to create is better. It's going to be better for all of you. And at the end of the day, it's okay. Now I'll deal with this tomorrow. Where's my dark chocolate? Huh.
We'll take one more question.
So, what about the socially economically backward class people and honor killings happening when they come out? So, what's your take on that?
My take on that is that it's really hard being queer everywhere. And at the same time, it's honor killings happen in elite homes too. It's not that honor killings only happen in this. So don't make this dichotomy that there is, one India. I mean, don't link class or language or other that to like people's behavior. In rural India as well, there are incredible I mean, what is urban, what is rural itself is problematic because it's all circular now today. But in any case, your socioeconomic status or your level of education or where you are located has no correlation to your love and empathy. I mean, you know, discrimination happens in the most elite institutions and in the, you know, and including parental discrimination and so on. There are enough examples of rich moms giving their children electroshock therapy as well. So I think we have to change, we have to change mindsets throughout. Is it harder to do some of this work in places maybe where a community infrastructure is not set up? What a lot of urban India has, like Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi and all, there are community centers, whether it's Humsafar, whether there's foundations, whether it's Solidarity, whether the networks are much more stronger in many of our cities. Not to say that there are not networks elsewhere as well. So I think, yes, is it more challenging having some of these conversations in other places? Yes. Are there incredible people who are having these, who are doing this work? Yes. What can we do from our urban locations? Give them our time, give them lots of our money, collaborate, connect, and so on, and help.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what the earlier person said. Even though I think a lot of violence happens even in oppressor caste homes, I think a lot more violence happens in because of us queer people as well not being allies to the oppressed caste folks, as well as people coming from marginalized religions. So I do think that problems like honor killings or problems with respect to so much is so much more underserved by the queer movement itself. This year, one of the themes was that there is no queer liberation until Dalit liberation. So I think that it's extremely important that as much as we enjoy our dude parties and all sorts of pride events, to kind of really work on unlearning our own caste biases and religious biases to make the world far more equal for the marginalized folks is really important. And until that does not happen, even if we get the next thing, which could be gay marriage, which could be every other thing, it will remain a very Savarna bubble. So I do think that it is important that we focus on that as well.